Well, hello and welcome to ILoveGay today. And I'm going to have some fun. We're all going to have some fun today. We are here with a blast from the past with Derek Hartley. How are you?
I am fantastic. It is great to see you again,
You
like
know,
this way, digitally.
we're digital now, but it was amazing that we were able to connect at the last weekend or a weekend and a half ago, but New York Travel and Adventure Show. But yeah, at that point, I think it may have been like almost 20 years between the last time I had seen you.
It had been a little while because
Yeah.
we met when I was still living in Los Angeles in the
Yeah.
90s, 1890s. But now that I am in New York, I don't see people from my Los Angeles past very often, but like in a haunted house movie, boom, pop up out of nowhere. But it's a pleasant surprise, a happy haunted house movie.
It was, but it's funny because for folks that don't know, I mean, you and I, our lives have kind of woven in and out of each other. Not just because we were both in Los Angeles, but because we both kind of started around the same time as far as being in that whole new digital internet online thing. Even before, and you were doing it even before the internet was the internet, and it was kind of more AOL. Um, uh, but for those that don't know, Derek was part of with Planet Out, and also you hosted this whole thing on AOL with Planet Out, I believe, right?
Yeah, so we were, you and I, sort of separately but parallel, were part of this nascent digital community that was really fomenting in the 90s. I got into it from a friend of mine, Eric Mueller. He had been a gay teenager in the late 80s. His dad was in the Air Force, and he got on, I want to say, CompuServe. He was on a pretty early version of the internet in the late 80s. And
Yeah.
he was, gay, and his dad was stationed in Alaska, and he was really isolated. And I think a lot of the gay people, certainly that I met early in digital media, they all had very common stories. They were from small towns and small places where they didn't know any other gay people. And as soon as they discovered that there was this way to connect with other gay people, they immediately threw themselves into it and sometimes just packed up and moved away and
Yeah.
just said, "Oh, there's another world out there with gay people in it, and I want to be a part of it." And so even at Planet Out, which was started by Tom Riley in the mid 90s, he had done Digital Queers, which was an early effort to get gay nonprofits, LGBTQ nonprofits, so we would say now, digitized, to get them computers, get them websites, to get them into a more modern era for connecting with people in the 90s. And then he started Planet Out. And I went to work there because Eric Mueller went to work there. We had become friends in LA. And that really started my digital life
Yeah.
back then. And I met you in this same time period because you were also in this space of this brand new world of, we have this resource
Yeah.
where we can reach people that it was very difficult to reach people beforehand outside of the International Mail Catalog.
Oh yeah, no, I know, and I remember that well also. But I mean, it was a great time because there was no roadmap for this stuff. This was at a time when it was all just starting out. When we all started, there was no Amazon, there was no Google, and I remember specifically where I was in September '95 when I saw that Planet Out had launched. There was a whole article about it because we had started what we were doing a few months before that, but thinking I don't think there's really going to be anything here. Let's just keep doing it kind of for fun and see what happens. And then when Planet Out emerged, all of a sudden we felt like, oh, maybe we are onto something. There is like a real future in a business here. And here we are almost 30 years later.
Yeah, there was a funny thing that happened at AOL, which doesn't get talked a lot about, but so for younger people, before the internet, most people, their access to the internet or connecting was through a dial-up service. And it was usually a local number, and there were local dial-up services, BBSs, that were very popular in various cities, but it was just for connecting locally, really. And then there were some national platforms like CompuServe and AOL early on. And at AOL, initially, they charged by the hour. to be online. So the real focus was not what we see now in media, which is page views, right? Because it's all ad supported. So you want people clicking and clicking and clicking. It's why, oh, here's a BuzzFeed photo gallery of 100 photos of Lady Gaga. Click, 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 click. Like that's what they're trying to drive. But at the time, they wanted you to just spend time there. So community elements like message boards and chat rooms were huge because that's where people spent time. Because a news article, you read that for a few minutes, you're out. And so they really looked at their chat numbers of where were people chatting? Who were the people who were chatting the most on AOL, and how could they tap into that community? And what they discovered is that right from the jump, the M4M chat rooms on AOL, gay men talking to other gay men, were among their most popular chats. And they got some, I can't remember who they were, but they contacted people to basically manage their chat for them initially. And then they were one of the initial seed funders through the AOL greenhouse of PlanetOut. But the greenhouse also funded a bunch of other companies that ended up some happened, some didn't happen, but like Love at AOL became Match.com, and the wedding site became a very popular weddings media company. The Motley Fool came out of the AOL greenhouse, and PlanetOut. So they were really putting like a little bit of money into a bunch of different companies and seeing, what would hit. But those M4M chat rooms were just an immediate monster hit for AOL, and they knew there was something there. The funny thing is that there were not F chat rooms for women because men would pretend to be women online, and there wasn't a lot of sort of an easy way to vet them.
Yeah.
And so that was more difficult for lesbians, but I have a funny story about this too. I know we're like, oh, we'll have a short interview, but I could talk about this kind of stuff for 10,000 years. But when there was another partner at AOL in the 90s, and it was a book club site. And it was just a place where people could chat about books.
Yeah.
And they noticed one month, suddenly their chat spiked very dramatically. And they're like, what the hell is happening in our very obscure literature chat room and message boards that previously were sort of, abandoned or underused? And they discovered that basically a roving band of lesbians had parked themselves there. That there was a group of lesbians that had, like, it was a word of mouth thing where it's like, tell your friends, this is where we are, and it's our safe space to keep men out. And so they would find a place on the internet and populate it. And then as soon as they were discovered, like a man discovered them, they would fold up and move to another, like, underused part of the internet. And it just shows that, there's a lot of discussion in media about viral, how can you have organic growth and viral growth? And that to me was really sort of the first thing where there is a community here. They are hungry to get together, but there are barriers to them getting together. But I think you saw the same thing that we did at PlanetOut, that we immediately were reaching people that were so thrilled that there was a broader community out there that they could connect with. And how much it meant to people, especially younger people, to be able to connect to other LGBTQ people in this way.
Yeah, no, I know there was, like I said, no roadmap, and it was like it wasn't a Wild West, but there was just such great opportunities if you can kind of have a vision for that. And but from there, you were, from PlanetOut, and then later, and you moved on, but you moved to New York, and then you became part of the SiriusXM and their digital radio with the OutQ radio that they had.
Yes. So you mentioned that the PlanetOut launch party. I went to San Francisco for the launch party of PlanetOut, and it was a terrific event and very exciting because PlanetOut's headquarters was in San Francisco. I was in LA. And while I was there, I met a guy who was doing streaming audio on the internet, John McMullen.
Yeah.
And, at the time, because it was dial-up, it was very difficult. Like the streaming audio thing, there was no streaming video, but the streaming audio thing was even difficult for some people, depending on where they were. It was really in the infancy of that. And he had been working at, I want to say Real Networks, which was one of the early streaming audio companies. And but he specifically wanted to do gay streaming content. And at the launch party, I had had an like a gossip column, like it's syndicated in gay papers, gossip column, and then I started doing some writing stuff for Planet Out. And he said, "Oh, why don't you do a show?" But he was literally walking around the party. You're interesting. Would you like to do a show? I mean, it was on that level because he just needed people who were engaging, who were willing to put their time into this new thing. And the guy who was syndicating my column at the time, he didn't want me to do it because he felt it would cannibalize the value of the column. He really did not see. And I think people listening now will be like, that's insane. Like anybody who watches MSNBC or CNN or Fox News, where the pundits come on and they're there because they have a podcast to promote and then they give their opinion, whatever, blah, blah. This kind of cross promoting across ecosystems, even podcast to podcast, is the norm now. But the syndicator was like, no, 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 no. If people are hearing you in the streaming audio, they won't bother to read your column. I'm like, that is crazy. Anyway, but I had a contract, so it really prevented me from doing a regular show with John. But we did do some. I did do some special programming with him. We went out to Birmingham, Alabama, when the puppy episode of Ellen premiered because the local ABC affiliate refused to air the show because it was about a lesbian coming out. And so somebody had rented like a place downtown and a satellite truck to beam in the show, and we were there for that. So I did do some things along the way with him. But yeah, in 2002, I was in New York and John was in New York, and he had been hired by Sirius Satellite Radio to do programming, and he wanted to launch a gay channel there, OutQ. And it was the same thing again. Oh, you worked with me before in streaming audio. Would you be interested in doing a show? And my syndication deal had ended. I was in New York. This was in New York. And I thought, sure, I'll try this for a few weeks or months. I had been working in the sort of digital.com space for a while, and there were a lot of startups that had very glamorous offices that they had spent an enormous fortune on and no business model. And then they would quickly go out of business. And so when I saw Sirius's offices in New York and Rockefeller Center, 2 stories, gorgeous glass studios, I was like, oh, this is going to last 3 months. And then I'll go back to having like a real job and a real life. And 20 years later, I am still doing this show. Now, we left satellite radio almost 9 years ago now, but even still, we had a really good run there.
No, I know, because that's the beauty of it, because they did do very well, but sadly, OutQ had just kind of, I remember it kind of closed. It seemed like rather suddenly, but in the midst of all that, you had the Derek and Romaine show, but there were other shows, Focus Group Radio. I believe others like Ann Steele and so forth may have been there then. But what's great is that I didn't realize I didn't pay attention until even more recently how you had created DNR Studios and was able to kind of create a landing spot for yourself and your show, but all those other folks to be able to kind of continue doing what they love most, but kind of in a new format.
Yeah, so when we went out when our show got canceled, we went to some big podcast companies.
Yeah.
And we were doing an afternoon drive show. Our listeners are commuters. And, if you've ever commuted on a job and you had like a favorite radio show that you would listen to, you get in the car, you listen to it during the time of your commute, and then you go on with your day. And that is a fairly typical thing, but it's very different from podcasting. But we went to these podcast companies and they said, look, launch your own podcast on your own. And when you have 50,000 subscribers, call us and we'll put you on our network. And I said, when we have 50,000 subscribers, what do we need you for? Like, you're not doing anything for us. And Romaine had a degree in sound engineering, which is how she got hired in the first place. And we just decided, you know what? We have the ability to do this on our own. Yeah. And we had started doing these group cruises, and that was growing very rapidly, 40% year over year, since we started it. And I said to Romaine, we knew our show would get canceled eventually. Every show gets canceled. Even someday there will be no Law and Order Special Victims Unit. Everybody's gonna get canceled. Sorry, Mariska Hargitay. It's been 25 years, but it can't go forever, right? So I knew our show would get canceled, and we needed to think about what the next phase was. And the travel thing with our listeners was growing. And I said, if this keeps up, eventually it won't matter that we have the show. We can just have these cruises, and then we could do our own show, and the cruises will be our advertiser. We don't need to bring in advertising. We don't need to charge anything, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, our show got canceled before we got to the place where that was where our cruise business was. But it was the reason that we started over independently on our own. And because of Romaine's technical ability, we were able to do something that other people whose shows have been canceled or who want to get into podcasting, whatever, can't do, because we were able to do a show, which we still do, which is live 5 days a week, taking phone calls. And then it's available after the show is over, like a podcast. But we're still doing a live daily commuter-focused show at the end of the day, because that's what our audience expects from us. And it's very different for us. But other shows that came from radio like we did, who go off into podcasting, if they don't have the ability to do it on their own, or they don't have the money to hire somebody to do it for them, or some other place to go, they have to just do a weekly podcast or a couple of times a week, and hope for the best on Patreon. And so I feel very lucky, because of the community around our show followed us, that they continue to support us. We're a subscriber business, and it's not like a tip jar. People know I'm paying for this service. I'm getting all of this content every month. And so we have a different relationship with our audience. And I wish I could say that what we do, anybody else can do, even other people who had radio shows. But we have seen some people have relaunched like we did, more successfully than we did. We worked for a while with Taylor Strecker. She has a very popular show. She was also on SiriusXM, and they canceled her show. And we worked with her for a while. She has a huge audience and has been very successful in relaunching her show in the way that we did. But we worked with other people who had shows, and they were not able to gain the same traction outside of the satellite universe in relaunching themselves. So it's tough, because we want to support these other shows. We worked with Taylor for a while, then she went out on her own. But I'm glad we were able to be there for her, when she first lost her show and didn't know what she was going to do. So we were able to be that transition for her, which was great. And then other shows, we've tried to offer them advice and suggestions of like, here is what we noticed. Here's what worked for us. Here's what didn't work. And hopefully, sharing that kind of information can be beneficial to people. But it's tough. Every show, which for yourself, every show is unique into itself. Even if you do feel like, oh, there's lots of other things in gay media, there's lots of other personalities, there's lots of other things in audio and that kind of thing. But the reality is, everyone is as unique as they themselves are. Yeah. And their audience is going to reflect that. And so you just have to find the path that works for you. This worked for us doing a subscription service because we came from a subscription service. The travel thing works for us because the relationship with our audience is one where they feel like we're their friends and they want to hang out with us. It's not a star on a red carpet, star on a step and repeat, pay money to sit in an audience and see us relationship. But everybody, you have to know your audience and your relationship with them and make it work.
No, it's interesting. You're very much a modern new media type of company, subscriber base, but instead of having to pull, to hustle and go out there and find advertisers or sponsors for your show, you've created a business model and a travel business that was able to fund that piece, so that gave you a lot of freedom to be able to just kind of create, and then also probably, I could tell when you're at the show, do what you love in the world of cruises and travel.
Yeah, I've tried to diversify our business because when the pandemic happened and shut down, we didn't have any travel business at all for a year and a half. That was very difficult. But fortunately, we have a diversified business model with this subscription service. So we also had advertisers as well because we have a free version of our podcast to sort of get outside of our bubble. So if people are curious about us, you just search Derek and Romaine in any podcast player. You can get samples of our shows, but. Yeah, I mean, it's been important to us to diversify our business, have no one quad of our business be more than 40% of our business, so that we can be insulated against downturns in advertising or no cruises because the world shuts down, or any volatility in our subscriber base. So that has worked out well. And with DNR Studios, we have our own app now, a streaming audio player, but we have other features that are in there too, to try to sort of build it out into a little bit more reflection of our community and everything. But we do seek out independent podcasters. So if anybody is listening and you are an LGBTQ person and you have an independent podcast, we do have a platform. We would love to help platform your show to reach more people because it is important to us that people not sort of struggle out in the wilderness on their own. There is plenty of pie for everyone. And, it is a benefit to us when we connect with other shows. It's a benefit for our audience. They learn about shows they might not have known about. They get more and better entertainment, and then they trust us of, oh, we're watching out for them. We're watching out for other people. And that's the kind of relationship you want to have. So we do have about a dozen shows, including, as you mentioned, John and Tim from the Focus Group. They have their Focus Group show and then their racier Unbuttoned show that they do. And Ann Steele, the cabaret star, she and her wife, Kelly, they do a show about being moms and traveling the world. And we also connected with some other independent shows like Gayish. Mike and Kyle have a very popular show, Minority, which is a terrific show that just we connected with them just last fall. So we're very excited about the other shows and being able to introduce our audience to them.
Yeah, I love hearing all this. This is a great catch up, but also it's a very uplifting story. So and with a piece of history that I think a lot of folks may not have even been aware of. So I think hopefully they listen to the entire interview and catch some good info.
Well, I am sorry. I apologize. I'm really long-winded because, I've been in a volume audio business for a long time. Our old show was 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. Now we do 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. And it is not possible for me to do a TV-ready soundbite about anything. So I apologize for my long answers. It's just how I am.
I love it. I think you're great. So no, but mostly I'm just appreciative that we were able to get together here today and you were able to share a bit of your story. And I very much look forward to reconnecting, especially I go to New York a lot. So I'd love to catch some time and maybe we'll just grab coffee and continue these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. Yeah, we should definitely we should see each other more than once every 20 years. I mean, that would be great.
Too. I think so too. But thanks so much for being here.
You bet. Thank you.